welcome back to another daily cribbage. I think today we will face against the impossible computer. Let's take it slow and see what we can learn about the game. Will we ever decide who's going to arrive first? We are the dealer first, and so our hand splits up into ace 4, which makes 5, and that combos with our 10s and the jacks and kings. If we were really desperate for points, we might throw away ace 4 and hope for a 10 to come up on top for the double run, but we don't need to do that at all. We're very happy to throw away double 9, opponent leads 10, and we have some options. We could play the ace, or we could play something like the king. Both options seem pretty good. If we play the ace, then we're effectively telling our opponent, well, if you want to play a 10, then we're mostly likely going to get 31 with one of our 10s. And if we play the king, what we're saying is that our opponent's good hands are usually ones that have other 10s that are closer to the 10 that they've played, so they probably don't have as many kings. Maybe if they have a double run, something like 10-10 Jack Queen, well, that doesn't quite make it up to the king. Or if they have some 5s in hand, we're telling our opponent, well, you should find a more convenient time to get rid of your 5. And so for instance, if we played the king here and our opponent played a 5, we might be setting ourselves up for pairing their 5. Although that's a slightly rare line. We'd normally just play the 5 straight away right now. So I think in this case and also there's a slight case to be made for the 4, but I think aces and kings are much better to go here. It's hard to say what's better. I think I'm just going to go with the king, and we get a 9, so it's very likely our opponent has 8s and jacks, probably slightly more 8s than jacks because we have a jack ourselves. There's an 8, and if we play our 4 now and we get paired, or our opponent has a 3, then their hand is a lot worse than, say, if we played the jack and they paired our jack. So we're going to avoid that and just play the 4. The 10 is not unexpected because they led a 10, so there we go. 2 points in the crib, all very standard, and the computer's evaluation is very similar. The next best thing to do is to discard ace 4 with a slightly worse average for the crib, but ace 4 in the crib is still quite good. The average for the hand by throwing away ace 4 is a lot less, but the thing is it has a chance to get 8 points, which can be quite good. Let's move on. So at the end of this round we're at 9-9, and we didn't really get all of the points we need to get to the first milestone at 18, but that's fine. Opponents also not got going to a particularly crazy start, only 9 points, average is around 10. Throw away king queen, keep the run of 3 and the 9-6 for 15. We had a 7, which is really nice, takes our hand up to something that's worth 9 points. So what do we lead here? Well, we could lead the 8. That's one of the middle cards in our hand, so it leaves us with the most playability. If our opponent plays a 7, we don't really get to pair the 7, so a nice sequence of plays when you have 8s and 7s in hand is to lead one of them, and then if your opponent makes it up to 15, then you get to pair using the cards that they played. So in this case, because we don't have a 7, we can't go 8-7-7, so I kind of prefer leading the 6. Let's try that. 6-4. 4 is very committal, and this is kind of an interesting play. So when you lead a 6 and your opponent goes 4, it means that they're either not worried about you playing a 5, or more likely is that this is the best of a bad situation for them. And usually what that means is that they didn't have many options. So there are so many cards that would be a lot better than playing the 4 here. Even a 3 or a 2 or an ace, all significantly better, less risky. Maybe even it's debatable whether a 5 or a 7 is better than playing a 4. Mostly because if you play a 5, then our 4 would be pretty good there, but also our 7s would be very good. An 8 might be pretty similar to a 4, although if our opponent went 8 there and we had our own 7, opponent would be very worried about us having a really high scoring hand. What would the 7 on top of the deck? And of course, all of the 9s would get you 15 points. Would give you a 15 for 2 points, and any 10 would be a pretty safe thing to do. So with this in mind, we've sort of narrowed down our opponent's hand to something very specific, because we're sort of saying that opponent isn't pairing our 6, and they haven't played a 5 or a 7, so or they wouldn't want to play 5s and 7s, so it probably means that our opponent's hand is mostly centered around 4s, 5s, and maybe 7. If I had to pick a really specific hand that our opponent has here, maybe it's something like 4 double 5 7 or double 4 5 7. It's a sort of strange hand, I guess. The closest hand that our opponent has that's very natural would be 4 5 6, with one of those being paired. But it seems like our opponent doesn't want to pair our 6. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, if we think very carefully, it means that opponent's probably tied into having cards that add to, or they're in the 4 range, 4s, 5s, 7s. So is there anything we can do to sort of exploit that? And in this case, I think the answer's no, because if our opponent has, say, 2 5s in hand, or 3 5s in hand, or 2 5s and a 4 left in hand, then those cards are adding to 9, 8, 9, 10, and how can we really combo that? Well, we can't really. Those are I said the sums of pairs of cards, and we only get to really play one card out now, so we can't really hope for anything like that. So we want to play something that's as safe as possible. I think that it's probably going to be the 9, because our opponent would have to play 12 points in order to get the 31, which they could do with a 7 and a 5. So actually maybe slightly safer is 8. And we just avoid our opponent having 7 6. I don't think they have 7 6 very often. So I'm just going to play the 8, see what happens. Opponent has a 9, which is a 4 there, which is fantastic. So that means we get the 31. 4, 3, and 7. Okay. I was expecting 5 and 7, but double 4, double 7 is 8 points, so not too bad for our opponent. And so thinking a lot about the kinds of hands our opponent had there kind of paid off. I thought that once we led the 6, maybe the 3 would have been a better lead, but maybe our opponent wanted to keep more cards open, and maybe they weren't actually too scared of us playing a 5, because they'd be able to continue getting lots of points out of the situation, either by playing the 7 or the 3. So after 2 rounds, we're at 20 points. Opponent's at 22, and we look down at a nice simple double run, and we get to throw away 8-4. King on top doesn't do much, and now we want to work out whether we want to play a jack or a 10. The 9's a bit too risky. Opens up 8s that our opponent could play, so let's go with the jack. and the most natural jack is a jack of hearts, because it's still possible for us to fake the flush. Do we want to do that? It doesn't matter too much here, because our opponent has so many hearts, they probably can figure out that we don't have a flush quite easily. But what's the total we're leaving it on? 29. Are we worried about 29? No, not too much. If our opponent has a pair of... I think our opponent has 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 7 is quite rare, actually, because the 7 doesn't combo with the 2, 3, 4. You'd much rather see... you more commonly see hands like 2, 3, 4, 8, or even 2, 3, 4, 6, for that matter, which score just as many points as 2, 3, 4, 9 and 2, 3, 4, 10, which are probably the ones that are most common. So instead, it could be a hand like 7, 2, 2, 4 for 4 points. Maybe, yeah, so maybe for that, well, the thing about 2, 3, 4 is that it's good at improving, and in this case it would improve to 5 points. So do we want to give that hand an extra 2 points, or do we want to give hands that are like 7, 2, 2 an extra 2 points? As always, very hard to tell. I'm gonna just give 2 points to a hand that has 2s in it, or none at all, because our opponent doesn't have anything 2 or less. Okay, opponent has a 9. Do they have another 9? Well, if they do have another 9, then their hand is terrible. It's only going to be worth 2 points, so we're going to gift that hand 2 points. Okay. And so the reasoning there is that your opponent's going to have the hands that are worth more often. And here we've got a standard 12-point double run, so we'll keep that. It improves to a 14-point double run, and we want to know what to lead first. I think we're going to lead the 8 first. And the point is that if our opponent plays a 7, then we get to pair the 7. 11 with a 3. So really common hands here are like 3, 4, 5, 10, 2, 3, 10, 10, ace 2, 3 stuff. I think that our opponent doesn't really have many 7s here, so that's what I'll play. And 6 is unfortunate because I can't play on top of that, but we would never been able to play on top of that. So 3, double 6. The most natural last card our opponent has here is of course a 9, which would score them a 8-point hand. If they don't have a 9, then maybe they have another 6 or another 3, which would score 12 points and 8 points respectively. So we should play the 8 here. The 8 points is what they did have, which is not as much as our 14 points, getting us to our milestone, but still, it's a 8-point hand is a good, it's very good. Okay. So, opponent likes how we're playing, and here, I think we've seen this hand before already. 6, 8, 9, 10. It's a 3-point run, and 2 points for 15. We get to throw away a low card and a high card, which is quite nice. It has the possibility to get us a 15. The jack improves our run a little bit, and the question is, what do we want to play here? I suspect that a lot of the time when your opponent leads like one of these 10s, you're going to expect them to have 5s in their hand, and unfortunately we can't really trap the 5 here. We don't have 6, 7, and here it would have been ideal to try and trap the 5 because we are playing second. One thing we can try and do is avoid our opponent getting points off small cards that they could have. So for instance, if our opponent has ace 4 or 2, 3, then they're always getting points off us no matter what we play here. I think we're going to avoid playing the 6 because it just makes the total, presumably if our opponent has 5 and 10, 10, 10, then if we play a 6, then our opponent will take it to 26. We'll say go, and then they'll get 2 points for the 31. And I think it's unnecessary to give them that. Probably the safest thing is just to play the 9, because hands that have 5 with lots of 10s in do actually have 10s in them. With the Jack on top of the deck, we're actually quite worried that our opponent has something like a 16-point hand, so let's avoid giving that extra points. They reveal the 9, which is very interesting, both of spades, so not sure what that means. I suspect it means that the opponent has maybe a pair of kings. That's what it could mean, or maybe they've got a 6 left. I think they're unlikely to be able to, well, they could have something like 7, 8, 9. We've blocked that slightly, so I don't think they have as many 8s. There's the other king. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say their last card is a 6 for 6, 9, double king. So we'll keep the 6 at the end. And there we go, a pair of 6s. That was one of the only ways that our opponent's hand was really scoring points there. Get nothing in the crib, which is always fine, especially when we're sort of far ahead like this. And by far ahead I mean that we made our positional milestone and we're just looking to try and get to the next one. And we pick up exactly the same hand, so why don't we just keep going with that? The first time we got this hand we picked up a 7, the second time we picked up a Jack. Let's see what we get this time. King. King is no help at all, and I think we will lead the 6. Again, it would be nice to be able to lead the 8, but I just don't see it. Okay, we get a 9 on top. We're going to pair this 9. We need all the points we can get. And our opponent reveals 9 for presumably a 2? No, a 3. So probably thinking that our opponent's last card is, I was going to say it's going to be a 2. I think 2 is the most likely card, but I could also see them having another 3 or an 8 of diamonds specifically. They could have a 5, but 5, 4, 3 is 5, 4, 3, 9 is very strange because the 9 doesn't interact with the rest of your hand. So the only reason to keep 9, 5, 4, 3 is if they were all diamonds. So this is why faking the flush can be really useful, is because it sort of obscures what our opponent's last card is. They could just have an 8 here and have a really terrible hand. I think we're going to pay that out. Nope, they had a 10. It was a 10 of diamonds, so that's why we saw what we saw. Now you get 4 points in hand. Let's see what the crib's all about. 3 points for the run. All good. In this position, the sort of second best discard is this classic ace 6, 8, 9. And the reason why this is classic is because it's sort of like a combination of two. It's a sort of an amalgamation of two combos. You've got 6, 9 on the one hand, but you also have ace 6, 8. And the way that they overlap here is with the 6. So if you get a 6 on top, then you double up both combos and you can get 10 points, which is really nice. And if you hit a 7 or a 10, then you can also get some runs going as well because the 8, 9 is connected. So this is the reason why I quite like this ace 6, 8, 9, and it sort of it appears with some regularity. We did make our 71, which is really good, and we're looking down now at a couple of different options. So we see that we have ace, ace, 5, 9 if we want to discard 7 queen, but the other discard would be just 5 queen with the idea that our 5 might be able to do more useful things in the crib. I think that I genuinely don't know. off the top of my head, so let's think about this for a moment. I think I like throwing away the 7 queen, and it's mostly because we get to keep a magic 16 with a 5 and 2 aces. So this plays quite well sometimes, and we can actually get a lot of points out of our double ace. For instance, if our opponent has a 5 with lots of 10s kind of hand, then opponent leads a 10, we play 5, our opponent pairs our 5, we go 9 for 29, opponent says go, and we just play out our pair of aces for a pair and 31. And in the best case scenario, their opponent's going to get an extra 2 points in the last card if they have a pair of 10s. So that's sort of the main thing I would be aiming for here. And of course, our 7 queen is not the best thing to discard. It's fairly hard to get any combos with it. It is suited, but that's not really worth very much. If we wanted to get more out of the crib, then it's worth noting that 7-9 has high potential for reward in the crib, because any 8 improves this discard to 5 points. So I'm just going to go with 7 queen, and let's see if we get something really exciting. So opponent already deviated from what we wanted our plan to be. Opponent doesn't have many aces here because we have them, so we rule out a lot of the hands that are like ace 4 10 10 or ace double 4 10, those kinds of things, and we start to think that our opponent might have some more 2s here, so maybe this 9's not going to be so safe, but it's really hard to play any other card in our hand, so we cut our losses and play this 9. And now we want to try and get the score up a little bit, so let's go up to 27 with the 5, leaving the 2 aces. See if we can get a pair. And we do. We get a pair plus last card, and we just hope the opponent doesn't have, let's say, 2 2s left. No, they had a lot worse for us. 4 5 double 6 is 12 points, and then the 9 combos with the 6s. So thankfully it wasn't a flush, but that was as close to a complete disaster as we can get without actually being too much in fear. And the hands of keep getting worse. This is tricky. We really need about 10 points to make our milestone, but this is not a hand that easily gets there. So the first thing to note is we've got 7 double 9 jack, and 7 double 9 is missing an 8 for the double run, and double 9 jack is missing a 10 for the double run. So 7 double 9 jack has really high potential, with 8 of the remaining 46 cards, so about 18%, maybe even just to say slightly less than a fifth of the time, we can get those 8 to 10 points quite easily. However, we could try and get something that improves more consistently, maybe by throwing away jack ace. The reason why jack ace, which leaves us with 3 7 double 9, improves more consistently, because actually I don't know why. For some reason in my head it improves more consistently. The nice thing is that if we get a 6, then if we throw away ace 3, then if we get a 6, we're not too unhappy. And we're also not too unhappy with 8s and 10s. Or I guess a 9. I'm sort of leaning more towards ace 3. I suspect that ace jack is a much more safe discard. And the thing is, the position is telling us that we really need to get those few extra points to get to the next milestone, or we can just hope for those points on the on subsequent milestones. So, and our opponent is most likely going to make 96 this round, and if they don't, then they're easily going to make it as pawn, so there's not too much we can do to slow our opponent down. But if we speed them up too much, then it could become a problem. I think I'm just going to go ace3 here. We do hit a 6, which is nice. And the question is, do we lead 7 or 9? Leading the jack, I don't think there's too much point here leading the jack. We don't really have any good follow-up plays after a 5. If we play a 9, we've got a good follow-up play if our opponent pairs R9, but if our opponent plays a 6, which they might feel is safer because a 6 has been cut, then we don't really have a good play after that. We have to go to 25 with our jack. But maybe that's fine. That's a fine way to offload our jack, so I'm leaning more towards that. The other option is to play the 7, and if we get an 8, then I think we are probably forced to play 9, which is not something we're too unhappy about because we really need just those few extra points to get us to the next milestone. However, it does start setting a slightly worrying trend because our opponent, if they play a 6 at the end, is going to get a lot of points, and they have cards that seem to be comboing with the cut cards, so they would have revealed something like 8 and 6, which with the 6 on top could easily be 6 plus points if they have an ace left, and the ace would also get them more points on the play there, or they could have big double runs if they have a 7 in the back. So I don't think we can really compete with those hands. We can compete with hands that have a rogue 8 that we manage to just get an extra point out of with our 9, and there's no good follow-up play. And those hands certainly exist. But I think it's a little bit safer to play the 9. And here we can't really play the 10, and playing the 7 leaves us with the best way to think about it, in my opinion, is that if we play the 7 here, what we've done is we've played a sort of unmagic 16. So our opponent's probably going to get value out of a 10 and a 3 that they would have left behind. So we're going to make it 20. And now we can go to 30. Opponent doesn't have the ace, so they don't get value there. And hopefully there's no 10 or jack. There we go. So only 4 points in our opponent's hand, which is actually pretty good considering all of the really strong looking combos that they had available. Computer much prefers throwing away a7, and part of that, I think the most part of that, is the safety in the crib. So ace3, 9, 9, throwing away 7 jack is thought more highly. But 7, double 9 jack, sort of the reason why we're keeping it is for the best hand. This hand, it has this high average mostly because of how we can high roll with it by hitting an 8 or a 10. And the 6s aren't too bad either. So we're 3 points off from our milestone, and we continue to look down at fairly bad hands, but there are things that we can do here. We can throw away the pair of kings if we want to play with 10 jack. We can throw away 10 jack if we want to improve to a run. And I think I like throwing away 10 jack. We could throw away 4-8, but it just really handcuffs how we can play. It just gives us not much playability. And the ace on top is fantastic. This turns our 2 points into 6 points, And now we get to, I assume we get to play the 8 here, because if our opponent has a 4, we get to pair it. Otherwise, if we played a king in this position, our opponent just gets free value out of their 2s. And we're really worried about 2s because 2-3 is 2-3 makes 5 with the 10s in their hand, and also the cut card is an ace. So 2-3, ace 2-3. It's a 3-card combo. Okay, our opponent had nothing better than to give us these 2 points. We'll take that. And he did have a 2. So our opponent would get points out of a 3 no matter what we play here, so we will avoid giving away too many points by playing our king, because our opponent has far fewer kings than they have 4s. Nothing in the crib, real shame. Turns out throwing away the pair of kings would have been better in hindsight, but it's hard to say. Yeah, so the computer's somewhat insane here. It throws away 8-4, giving itself 4 10s. I don't think any human's really going to do that. And maybe the slight difference in this computer's evaluation compared to others is probably, I think it's just skewing it more towards this 4-8 because it really wants the crib to be, well, why is 4-8 that much better according to the computer? Here is because the hand scores better, because whenever we cut a queen, it's doing a lot more. It's getting us a long double run instead of a short run in the crib, which, okay, that does contribute a little bit, but makes it really hard to play. So we didn't get much out of that hand, and so now we're a little bit stuck. Our opponent is in position and we are really out of position. I think that we don't have a hand that allows us to catch up in any way. We'd only be able to catch up if we were going out this hand. And the only way to go out this hand is if we kept 8-9, cut a 7, and managed to get lots of points on the play. And this is pretty far-fetched. I think it's much nicer here to throw away something as safe as possible and try our hand at getting a few points on the play by keeping 3-9 together as a combo, because if we lead a 3 and our opponent pairs it, we can get 15 with the 9. So I'm really leaning towards throwing away 8 queen for safety, and keeping 2-3 as well. We keep the 2-3, it improves a little bit, and ideally we cut a 4. Oh wow, perfect cut, takes us up to 9 points, and so we have to work out what to lead. I think this is just simply leading a 3, because we get to make this nice play. And we have to play our 2 here. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have any 2s, okay? They don't have anything that's 5 or less. We get a 15 here. They had a jack left at the end. I think our opponent missed a trick there. They should probably lead the jack, because we have more 9s than, well, we don't have any 5s, is the point. Opponent had a flush in hand, which is pretty nice, but it only scored them 6 points, and the crib was only worth 2 points. So overall, we managed to get away with quite a lot of stuff there. Opponent's looking for 12 points this round. We have a lot of points in hand. So there's 2 ways to really go about this. We're either winning on the play with 5 points, and if we're winning on the play with 5 points, we need a hand we need to get lucky in that case. It's hard to get 5 points on demand. It's possible, but one of the key components that's missing from our hand is a 7 or an 8. And 7s and 8s are, you usually want one of those if you want to guarantee to get points on the play. However, instead of having a 7-8, we do have a 5-6 connected set of numbers, so that sort of covers the the 4s and the 7s slightly, and we also have a 9, 10, which also covers the 8s slightly. So in a sense, we can kind of play around. We can play around the fact we don't have 7s and 8s here, but we have to devote a lot of our cards in order to cover those options. I think that, yeah, we have so many points in hand that we're really guaranteed to go out at the end of this round no matter what we discard, so we don't have to keep anything crazy, like we don't have to throw away 3-6 out of necessity, or 3-5 if we want to put a 5 into our crib, something like this. If we wanted to, we could throw away whatever the worst discard here is, probably 5-9, I think is the worst discard. And we would still be pretty close to being fine. I'm leaning towards throwing away 5 Jack because I want to keep a wide spread of cards, so I want to keep maybe one of the 10s. I'm also thinking about throwing away 10 Jack as well. 5 Jack still guarantees that we're going out because we get 2 points in hand, 2 points in the crib, 1 point on the play. But it also gives us a fair number of different values for the play as well. But that could be also said about discarding 10 Jack. Well, let's discard 5 Jack and see what happens. There's also a chance that we cut a Jack and then our task of getting winning on the play becomes a lot easier. No, instead we get 9. So there is an option here, and I think I'm going to take it, which is to play the 9. And so why is playing the 9 good? Is, well, it allows our opponent to play 8 to get 3 points for the run, but effectively this is a trap. We then get to respond with our 6, that gets us 4 points, and we haven't given up the ability, we haven't given up our 1 point on the play. So we're guaranteed to get an extra point because we've played the same number of cards as our opponent. So either our opponent will have an ace and get 2 points for 31, and we'll have an extra card for the next play, or we just get our extra points and we win. What's the worst that could happen when we play our 9? I think the worst thing that could happen is that our opponent pairs our 9, but then if they do that, then I think we can just play our 6, get 32 points for 31, and our opponent's shown 7-9 with a 9 cut. Maybe if they have, there are a few hands that win there, but we've only given away 2 points and our opponent's still needing 10 points to win. There's not many 10-point hands of that form. Remember that if our opponent had kept something like a double run in hand that involves 7s and 9s, that hand is now worth a lot more points because of the 9 cuts that we're already losing to it, so we don't need to worry about them. We'll play the 9. 7-4. Okay, this is an interesting development. Opponents sort of hinting to us that they have hands that are based around 7s and 4s. So what does that mean? They could have 4, 5, 6, 7. So it'd be a real big mistake to play our 6 here, or our 3 for that matter. So it really handcuffs us into playing 10s. But just for completeness, we should think, what's our opponent's hand really looking like? Well, it could also look like double 4, 7 of some kind, and then maybe an 8. Double 4, 7 ace, possible, but less common. Double 7, double 4, potentially. But playing the 10 here is, we're not unhappy about it because we do get to keep 3 and 6, and now we get to decide. So our opponent's shown us ace, 4, 7. So if our opponent has a 3, then their hand is worth... Okay, so with the 9 card, we're worried about hands that are worth usually 8 points, because we don't want those hands getting an extra 2 points. So what are the 8-point hands that have ace, 4, 7 in them? Struggling to think of any. If our opponent's last card is an 8, then their hand is worth 5 points. If our opponent's last card is any 10, then it's only worth 2 points. Our opponent's last card is a 7, and their hand is worth 4 points. If it's a 2, well, that's not many points at all. That's only 2 points for the 2, 4, 9. So if our opponent's last card is a 6, then that's also only worth 2 points. So I think we're just going to play the 6 there. It is a 7, and that's the game. We got our 4 points that we needed across our hand and crib, and our opponent didn't get there in the end. So what's the tale of this game? Well, we managed to squeeze out a few extra points on the play. We got pretty lucky with some good hands and cribs as well, so everything was going in the right direction for us. Actually, our cribs weren't too good, but we did make up for it with some good plays. So I hope you enjoyed that one. That was a long one today, but I hope you'll be back for another daily crib. See you then. Bye.